Hello, friends. Welcome to this session. Here we are going to go through how to get your first job. The agenda for this meeting is an introduction, roles, best way to start a career, common tools, an invite, and then action required. Current situation is that you have passed out of your engineering after studying for 4 years and you are looking for a job. Now, when I passed out from engineering, I didn't know what software engineering actually is and what people do over there. So this is basically we are going to have a peek inside the world of software and software developers and how they perform. A web-based application and a mobile-based application are the two most commonly created softwares. So if you know how to develop this or if you are a part of the development cycle of these systems, you are ought to get a job. So how does this applications work? Okay, here on the right hand side you can see we have a client. So a client can be a mobile application or it can be a browser. Okay, and then whenever required, this uh, the systems hit the backend system so that uh, a response will come from them. A response can be in the form of uh, I mean whenever required, uh, this browsers or this mobile application will hit the server. The server will process something and will return back the required data for it to perform. So the communication between client and the server happens over here. Now, this is a very simple client server based application. But when you go for the actual world, when you go for getting a job, many people will start using the word cloud. So what is this cloud all about and how is it different from the original client server based applications? Let's have a look inside. So the old client server way was that uh, say for example 5 or 10 years from now, all systems were very costly. I mean, if you want to get a good quality server, it was really costly. Then you put memory inside it and the cost of the entire system becomes huge. There were no way to do parallel processing. I mean, there were ways, but they were not efficient enough. So if you have five servers, five computers, and you want to convert them to servers, uh, it was not that efficient for all five computers to act as a single system. So inefficient parallel processing. Server used to overload with requests from clients. So if you have say 100 million downloads and all these people want to access some part which requires a connection to the server, so a request to the server. So when this huge load used to come to uh, the server used to, I mean, because of the less memory and inefficient computing, it used to become slow, or it used to have a lot of lag. And that was the mentality that all systems should perform more at the client side. So you give all the processing to the client, and whenever required, only you hit the server. So there was this world of all desktop applications and and things like that. So this was the old way. Now the cloud way. What happened in this 5 10 years? The server's capacity increased in terms of processing power as well as in terms of its memory. So now we can actually do all that millions and billions of requests at the server with the same price or maybe even less. So that was the first advantage. The second advantage is, say if you have five systems, okay, and these five systems can now act as one single system and reply to your request. So the parallel computing power increased a lot. And if you want to do some big processing on these servers, there are systems like Hadoop and Spark, which has this immense ability of performing this parallel processing. um, when this big strong servers came into existence, people decided that one application may not use the entire power of that particular server. So they started creating compartments. So a compartment is something like a closed area which is given to you, which will act as its own computer. And this kind of systems are called as virtual machines. So A virtual machine is a component of a bigger server which is given for your application, which is independent of other parts of the server. So if anything happens in any other application, it will not affect you because you are in a separate component. So the beginning of virtual machine started. And then once you have virtual machines, you needed something like, for every virtual machine you had to install 10 dependent softwares, or you need a database, you require servers, you require logical servers, you require third party application, you require a lot of things. So what people decided is to create something called as Docker containers. This contain with these containers, you don't have to install anything. Things will be installed for you when it is activated. So for example, you want to build up a Java machine, just click on one particular button and all the softwares required for it will be automatically downloaded into your virtual machine, which is independent of other applications which are running in that big powerful server. So that is the cloud way. Faster processing, compartmentalization, virtual machines, and Docker containers. So this is the cloud way. Now I know this is going into a bit more technical, but this is something which you must know, so that if somebody asks you this kind of questions in the interview, you are at least able to understand what they are talking about. Okay. Now let's go through an example here. So Mr. Sulak just got an permission to hire a new team to create a new dashboard that will increase our revenue by 10%. So, what this means is he has got a requirement that he has to create a cloud based dashboard by which the revenue of the company will increase by 10%. Okay, and has got the required permission. So, now the next step is he will be looking for a good team. So after months of hard work, he was able to find the right people who can accomplish this task. So these are all the people he need to make this task. And let's see what these people are. And these people are now going to give their introduction. So it starts with Manohar, who is a design guy, more like UX design guy, and he knows the design, and he works with Photoshop, Azure, Sketch, etc. So these are wireframe tools whereby which you can design things out, for example for a mobile app or for a website, or things like that. So this guy Manohar doesn't have any idea of how the code is going to be, but he will sit with Sulek, and he will find out what should it look like once it is ready. So he will create a skeletal design of things, how it is going to look after that. He's basically going to give face to an idea. Next, we'll go with Dhara, who is a front-end developer, and she says that she has been working with static web pages using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc. Okay, so um, she was working with static web pages. So since there is static, there is going to be dynamic also. So what are these two kinds of pages? Let's have a look into it. So if I go to timesofindia.com, we see that there is a page which opens. Now this page with the stories and all is going to be same for all the persons who log into timesofindia.com. But when I log into my mails with the same outlook.live.com ID, I am going to see only my messages. I'm not going to see anybody else's messages. So this page is created just for me here. So these are called dynamic pages, which will change depending upon the user or some parameters. And there are the static pages that will remain the same whenever you open that particular website. So that is what she has been telling, that she has been working with static web pages, and the technologies were HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc. Then she says that there has been a lot of development in my field in last couple of years. Okay, and all requirements now require application level look and feel. I mean, the pages should not refresh. Okay, so let us understand what she wants to say. What she is saying is, if you go to hotmail.com and if you click on any other page, for example here, you see none of the things changes, only this part is changing. So what exactly happens over here is the page is not refreshing, only some part of the page is changing. Whereas there are other kinds of pages. For example, you go to gmail.com and you open a basic HTML version of it, you see this kind of a page. Now, whenever I click on sent mail, you see there is this small change, that flicker, tung, that happens because the entire page is refreshing here. Okay, so uh, the right hand side page, this part, this is an iframe and it gets completely refreshed whenever you click on something. So these are kind of where the entire page is going to reload, whereas some part of the page is reloading with other things. So to make this kind of an application where only a part of the web page changes, we have to use specific frameworks which makes the job a lot easier, like Angular, React, Vue, etc. So Angular is created by Google, React is created by Facebook, and Vue is an open source kind of a framework. So using this framework, you can create an application level look and feel onto your front end application. And she'll be having multiple discussions with Manohar and to check whether what he's designing is actually feasible when it comes to an actual application. So Manohar can design anything, but it should actually be something which she can work with. So she'll be having discussions with the UX guy. Now, let us meet our mobile developer. His name is Mr. Abhi. He works on Android and iOS devices. iOS means iPhone. Um, for Android, I know Kotlin, official language of Android, and Swift. So Kotlin is the official language of Android, and if you want to create an iOS application, you have to use a language called Swift. Okay. Now Kotlin is very similar to Java and runs on the JVM. Now JVM is Java Virtual Machine. So it's going to process bytecode and it is going to execute them. So Kotlin is a separate language with a separate syntax, but when it is compiled, it gets converted to bytecode with the JVM which it can use. And a lot of syntax of Kotlin is same as that of Java. So if you know Java, you can very easily learn Kotlin. Um, and he's saying that I have also started learning React Native, in which the same code can be reused for Android and iOS devices. So currently, if you want to build an app for Android, you need a completely different code set, and for iOS, you need a completely different code set. So using this thing called React Native, you can create applications which use or share a lot of code base. Say, for example, 80% of the code between Android and the iOS devices will be same if you build using React Native, which is from the Facebook. And he will also be having multiple discussions with Manohar to make sure that what mobile design Manohar is making is suitable for actual implementation. And on all the website, you will find below saying that if you want to know more about what these people do or the trends of it, you can just copy and paste this in the browser, and you can have more information about it. Next, we are going to meet Mr. Viren. He is a backend developer. And the job of a backend developer mostly revolves around efficiency and scalability. So efficiency is how many for loops you are using or how many if conditions you are using. And scalable means if there are 100 million users, will your application still work or will it crash? So we are looking at efficiency and scalability here. And he says that I work mostly behind the scenes and give APIs that consumes or produces JSON response. So all the clients, I mean web client or a mobile client, is going to hit his application, and his application is going to respond, and the communication happens using something called as a JSON. So if I want to talk to you, say I'm talking with you right now, I'm talking in English language which you can understand, and which if you tell me I can understand. So there is this language interchange, and the language interchange between the clients and the server is using JSON. So how does the JSON actually look like? Let's look into it once. Okay. So I created this weather API, which will give us a small overview of how uh, how a JSON API looks like. So if you go over here, and I have given Bellary, and it's going to give us a map like this. So at the topmost part, it is 11 items, and when you go below, you will find multiple boxes where different information about it is there. So name is Bellary, coordinates are this much, weather is going to be cloudy, and wind is going to be at come at this speed, degrees are this, and all the information about a climate. So this response is basically given by a backend application, and it is consumed by the front end applications, both mobile and web, so that they can show in a nice graphical manner for the user. So backend works like a brain for any application. And um what he's saying, I work on Java Spring Boot architecture. So this guy is also using Java, and he's using something called a Spring Boot. So Spring Boot is the framework by which he is making this backend application, and he is using Hibernate as the ORM framework. Now when you are working on backend, you have to interact with all kinds of databases, say for example MySQL, Postgres, Oracle, SQL Server, etc. And to interact with them you have to have you have to give queries to those applications. So you give a query to MySQL, and it's going to respond you with the data from the database, and you are going to process on the top of it, and you are going to give it back to the front end application. So Hibernate works as a mediatory, or the ORM framework works as a mediatory between the actual application which is processing things and the database which is storing things. So when you learn Spring Boot, you will come to know about ORM frameworks, why they are needed, what is Hibernate, and things like that. So he has a fair bit of knowledge about databases and queries because his job requires that to be, and he's learning new databases like NoSQL. MongoDB is an example of NoSQL. So you don't have data in a column-based format. Uh, Rather, you have something called as a key value pair or a JSON kind of storage mechanisms. So when you have huge amount of data and you don't require the full SQL functionality, you can go with MongoDB. Um, then there are graph SQLs like Neo4j. Now, in one of the demos of Neo4j, the person who developed it told that it is like 500 times faster than MySQL for complex joins. So that is what the power of different databases is like. He's also saying that a lot of my friends who works on startups are using Node.js, uh, Django, PHP, or Firebase for backend tasks. So if you're going for a startup, chances are that those people would be using Node.js, which is JavaScript based, Django, which is Python based, and PHP, which is a very good language if you want to make backend applications. uh, Firebase, which will give you all the APIs inbuilt, but then you have to compromise on the flexibility. So these are various ways by which you can achieve your backend application. Let's meet Mr. Tomash. Tomash is a cloud DevOps guy. So when it came to this cloud architecture, there was this new role which was developed for the cloud-based operations. This guy is basically half developer and half network engineer. So he's a development plus operations guy. And he's saying that my job is to provide the required infrastructure on the cloud for the application to run. So he's going to create VMs, he's going to create containers, he's going to deploy containers, he's going to increase memory, increase processing power, and all these kind of things. So he creates Docker containers, virtual machines, etc. And the technologies which this guy uses, I'm pretty good with Linux and can automate a lot of tasks using Bash or Perl scripts. So if you are in a Linux environment and if you want to code something, you can use Bash scripts to quickly automate few tasks. And when you want to work with the data or something, Perl scripts are pretty handy. And he's saying that I create pipelines for continuous integration. Okay, so what is this continuous integrations? Say for example, there are five people working on a particular set of code. Then all these five people will need to deploy or run their software. Now, when you do it locally, That is one option. Another one is if some other guy has done something, you need his code also. So this kind of an interchange where you put your code, the other guys put his code, the application is automatically reloaded on the cloud with the code base of mine. I mean the person who is working and the other person who has worked on it. So this kind of way is called continuous integrations. And he works on AWS, which is Amazon Web Service, Azure, which is Microsoft Azure, uh, and Google Cloud Computing. So these are all platforms on the cloud where you can deploy your applications and increase or decrease memory. So you can just go through. I mean, you can Google this and you can find more information about these cool concepts. Um, I also work with Viren and tell him the efficiency of the application deployed. Okay, so once the application is deployed, people are going to test it. And when you test it, there can be cases where the server crashes or a part of the memory gets full or if there are some errors. In that cases, their alerts will go to Tomash and Tomash is going to take these alerts and go to Viren and say that your code is crashing or the memory is getting full. Please fix it up. So all the network related cloud based operations are performed by Tomash. Let us meet our uh, experienced person called Neeraj, who is a machine learning expert. So with a dashboard, you require all that predictions and everything. So Neeraj is this the person, and he's saying that I am very good with statistics and data is my passion. Okay, so if you are very good with statistics and if you are very good with data, then this is the career option. And the technologies that he uses is Python and R, and he's going to work on a lot of algorithms. And he says that I work with huge amount of data and use deep learning to implement ANN classification. So these are machine learning concepts called artificial neural networks. um, say for example, based on certain parameters, uh, will I go to office or not today? So there may be a lot of parameters that depends for my it can be, say for example, my health may not be good. I may take a leave, or maybe I will I just want I'm just I have some personal work and I will be busy. So there may be a lot of reasons by which I may not go to the office today, or something like that. So there are two options. I will go to the office or I will not go to the office. So the choice is made based on a complex set of algorithmic computations, and it is going to give a result saying yes or no. That is called as classification. Regression is something like my previous year's data or revenue has been this much, and if I'm making these changes, what is the possibility, how much will the revenue rise? So he will create a complex algorithms by which he can determine that if you continue on the same path, you are going to achieve this much result or this much revenue. And CNN is convolution neural networks, and RNN is recurrent neural networks. So he's going to use stuff like this. And he's saying that NLP is the hot trends nowadays, and a lot of requirements come in this regard. So NLP is natural language processing. So anything work, many complex machine learning algorithms are a trend right now for NLP based tasks. So if there is a huge text of English words, can you determine what it is actually written? So as a human being, we can understand what a sentence is, but can the computer understand what that sentence is? So for example, there is a paragraph written and you want to tell whether the sentiment of this paragraph is good or is it bad. So there are algorithms that will find out the sentiment using NLP based technologies to determine the result. And he's saying that I can predict trends and help Viren to provide data which can be used as a part of the JSON response. So he's going to uh, do some processing so that Viren can use his output to uh, give the intelligence to the final dashboard. So that is Mr. Neeraj. And finally, let us meet our tester. Her name is Kinjal, and she does manual as well as automation testing. And I'm pretty good with domain knowledge and know a lot about system, how the system should function. So she basically has talked many times with Sullek, and she knows how the application should function. So functionally, she knows how the code should actually work, but she doesn't directly work with that code, but she checks whether that code is properly written, are all the functionalities working properly, and things like that. She uses Java for doing automation testing using Selenium. So Selenium is a kind of driver by which you can automate a lot of tasks and do a lot of testing at the click of a button. And to do that, you should know Java. She's saying I also do penetration testing using Wireshark to make sure that nobody can hack the system. Okay, so she is a penetration tester also, and she uses Wireshark, which is a tool which she is using so that nobody can hack the system. So there can be a lot of attacks which can happen out in the on the internet. So she is going to check whether somebody is going to exploit the system, or is there a way where somebody can artificially crash the system. So performance testing or load based testing is something which she does as well. So you can know more about testing below. The common tools which people use here are Git, Slack, Skype, and Agile Scrum is for development, Outlook for mails, the microservices, and continuous integration with Jenkins pipeline. So what is Git? Now, if I'm coding in my system and tomorrow if I fall sick by any chance, the code which I have been writing for months will go to waste because there will be no way for me to actually give back the code. So there is a system called Git by which you can store the code. So once you put some code over there, the code will always exist. So let me show you a small example of one of the codes of a Git thing. So in one of the projects which I have developed, I use this tool called GitLab, where you can go and see the kind of commits put in and understand how it actually works. Sorry. So this is my code base. When I click on something, for example, when I click on source, I'll be able to see all the data over here. So this is the kind of data, and this is something which I have committed. So whenever I want this, I can just use one command and I will get all the code back. See, if there are 10 people working on the same project, they can keep on committing that code over here, and whenever required, you can pull this code so the changes made by all other people will come to your system and you can build on the top of that. So these are the advantages of Git. So these are all the commits which I have done. So one commit can be a collection of one or more files. So let us see one commit. So this in this commit I changed this many files. Earlier it was this. This is something which I did. Uh, so this is what it's saying. It is saying that you have 8 change files, 267 additions, and 124 deletions. And so it will give you all the information about what changes are made, where changes are made, and things like that. So agile scrum model. So if you go to any software company, they'll say that we use agile as our development system. So this is something which you must have learned in your academics, something called as waterfall model and an agile system and things. So if you have a big system which you are developing, and if you use a waterfall model, there can be a case where once you work for 6 months, the final product that you build may or may not be liked by the client. So in that case, all the work which you do can be wasted. So Scrum or Agile is a small, it will reduce the entire 6 months work into small patches called sprints. And in every sprint, there will be a target that these are the targets that we are supposed to achieve. And there will be a Scrum lead who is going to guide the people on the right way to achieve this task. So it is a development methodology by which you can do the software development. Microservices are a very hot words nowadays, just like clouds. And instead of creating one big bulky system, you divide your task into small, separate, independent components which will then interact with each other. So that is about microservices, and this is Outlook for mails, and you can use Slack or Skype. Let me show you Slack or how it looks like. So this is Slack, and when you open Slack, you'll be able to see lot of people messaging a lot of things over here. So this is the Slack where you can interact, see if somebody else has written something, reply to them, like them, give reactions onto them, and things. So that is called as a Slack. And finally, uh, I have gone through all the roles which are possible ways by which you can start learning and preparing for your first job. And since there are a lot of technologies involved, it is like almost impossible to learn all of them. So check where your interest lies. That is the most important part. Check your interest and choose one among them. Then concentrate on learning the technologies required. So if you want to go with testing, you need to know what tech technologies I have to learn. In that case, Selenium. So you need to learn Selenium about it. If you want to become a front-end developer, then you have to learn Angular, React, Vue, etc. And if you want to become a back-end developer, you again have to learn Java. You have to learn databases, little bit of SQL, and all that. So choose one role and start working towards it. And the best way to learn based on my experience is to make a project, develop a project on your own, or be a part of somebody who is developing. So make a team among yourselves and see whether you can actually develop something or not. So I understand that I have gone through a lot of details in this presentations, and as a fresher, it will be a bit crazy right now. So um, I am pretty sure you will be confused and you want to know more about this, and you want to learn about technologies. You want to start building your projects. If you have an idea and you would like to know the best way to develop it. So if you have these questions, if you want to know how are interviews conducted, or if you want to just have tea and snacks, you can come to this particular location over here. So me and Suma are coming to Bellary on 30th June at 5 p.m. at this particular address, and I have around 10 years of experience and she has around 7 years of experience, and we can guide on how things are. So currently I have just gone through a bird's view of the technologies and the roles and other things, but there we can go in much more detail on how your individual approach should be to achieve your goal and to get your first job. So let's meet over here. And even if you are not interested in anything, okay, even if you don't understand anything, just come there to have tea and snacks, and you will go with something more that will help you get your job or work more better in the software field. So that's all from my side, guys. uh, One last thing. So if you want us to actually come, we need some people to come. So please reply as yes in the group, and once you reply yes, we'll make all the arrangements for our meeting, and you can forward this to as many people as you want who are interested in the software field. And this is the QR code. So if you have a mobile and if you want to join this group, if you are not yet joined, you can always you're most welcome to be a part of this group. So that's all from my side, guys. Thank you so much, and catch you on 30th June in Bellary. Bye bye.